Our next discussion is all about the gaseous part of the Earth or gaseous layer of the Earth, which constitutes to various gases, um, which are also important to the survival of different organisms, and of course, the issues attributed to these gases as they accumulate or they occur in larger proportions in the atmosphere. So the discussion runs onto the composition of the atmosphere and the layers of the atmosphere. And one of the most important part of the discussion is actually the part of the ozone layer. And what are the related issues in some of the layers of the atmosphere, as well as uh, the laws and policies that governs these particular issues. So we will discuss that. So there are four great realms or spheres of the earth. Um, you have the physical, and you have the biological. So for the physical, that constitutes three: the solid part, the water, and of course, the our discussion, you have atmosphere or the gaseous part, and that includes also the biological realm, which constitutes the biological system, which is also dependent on the gaseous layer of the earth. So the atmosphere is a gaseous blanket of air encompassing the Earth from above and up to its surface. So it receives and returns heat and moisture from the surface and redistribute them. So in this figure, you can see the different layers of the Earth with corresponding length from the surface of the Earth. So you have troposphere, stratosphere, ionosphere, and you have exosphere. So as you can see, ano yung uh, different things that can be observed in these particular layers. So yung airplanes, for example, hanggang this particular level lang siya, within the troposphere pa siya, and you have the clouds na tas troposphere pa rin, and yung sinasabing aurora lights, so usually nasa ionosphere na siya. And of course, dito sa pinakalabas na part, andito yung mga spaceships. Okay? So in between ionosphere and you have exosphere. In terms of the penetration of different wavelengths of light, as you can see, so you have infrared and visible light can penetrate towards the surface of the Earth as compared to UV, X-ray, gamma rays, or light wavelengths or wavelengths of light which are of higher energy. Natatrap po sila dito sa part na to. Okay? So, nabe-break po yung light na yun, as you can observe. So, there are also solar rockets. For solar rockets, umaano sila hanggang sa ionosphere. You have the weather balloons within the stratosphere. And as you can see, kahit yung pinakamataas na mountain on the Earth is actually within the troposphere pa rin. Okay? So atmosphere is air and the protective ozone layer are contained in the atmosphere. So ito yung pinaka um, layer ng atmosphere which is accompanied with different issues. Okay? Especially for the thinning of the protective ozone layer. So there are dynamic changes occurring between the Earth's solid surface and the atmosphere, as well as the Earth's solid surface and the outer space that makes up the weather changes. Okay? Especially for atmospheric temperatures, for example. So most likely the temperature within the air has something to do with the distribution of climate or the variations of the climate, as well as also the different adaptations of different organisms. So if you check the composition of the air, it is not actually purely oxygen. So the air is composed mainly of nitrogen, which is 78%, and only 21% of that is oxygen. However, the oxygen in the air is being absorbed by the body, not the nitrogen. So kahit malaki ang proportion niya, Siya po ay hindi naa-absorb ng katawan but the oxygen po na ini-inhale natin sa gas ay yun po yung naa-absorb, yung nagde-diffuse sa ating lungs. And 1% is composed of other gases like of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, ammonia, argon, and neon. This 70% or 78% nitrogen in the air is used primarily by other organisms or being fixed by other organisms in order to convert this nitrogen in the atmosphere to a readily available nitrogen for other organisms, especially for plants. Okay, so we can discuss this one, the importance of nitrogen in the air when we reach the biogeochemical cycles. Okay. So in the layers of the atmosphere, I have already discussed this to you. This, what are the things that can be found in the different layers and the distance from it. So you have the troposphere from the surface. And as you can see, in terms of the differences, or may differences din ang layer ng atmosphere in terms of temperature. So sinasabi in some references that as you go on higher elevation, kumbaga pataas ka ng pataas from the surface of the earth, the temperature trend seems to decrease. However, my stationary phase as you enter the ozone layer, for example, and going to the stratosphere. Pagdating dito sa stratosphere, unti-unti naman siyang tumataas. But since nasa zero pa rin, malamig pa rin siya. Okay? However, entering the mesosphere and towards the thermosphere, malamig na naman ulit. Okay? And then pag akyat dito, saka hanggang dun sa exosphere, yung nasa solar system, malapit sa sa outer space kumbaga, ay tumataas na naman ang temperature because of its exposure to sunlight. Okay? So there are variations in terms of temperature as you go on different um, layers of the atmosphere. So in this case also, you can observe that the ozone layer is in between the stratosphere and the troposphere. Okay, so we will discuss what is the importance of ozone layer on the next slides. Okay, with regards to the atmosphere, one of its issue, since sound travels within the air or sound waves travels within the air, so you have what we so called noise pollution. So it can be defined as an intrusive noise that disrupts, distracts, or detracts the regular functioning. So there are we human beings and even other animals are very sensitive to a louder noise. Okay, so it could be annoying, stressful, or damaging to ears. So it can also be called as environmental noise because it is displeasing to human or machine created sound that disrupts the activity or balance of human life. Okay, so the word noise comes from the Latin word noxia, meaning injury or hurt. Okay, so there are instances that if you hear loud noises or loud voices, you seems to be irritated and you seems to become unfocused on the things that you are doing. So that is noise pollution. So this type of pollution is part of the atmosphere discussion. It is because sounds travel through the air or sound waves. Okay. So as what I have told you, one of the important part of the atmosphere, aside from the different parts, is actually the ozone layer. So ang ozone layer po is a type of oxygen, okay, which is discovered by this particular scientist. So, it is a three atom of oxygen. Hindi po siya oxygen na two atoms, but three atoms. Tinatawag siyang ozone gas, which constitutes two ozone layer. Okay. So the location of the ozone layer is within or between the stratosphere at the outside part and troposphere in the inside part. Okay, so 10% of the troposphere constitutes the ozone layer and 90% is in the stratosphere. Okay, so what does it do? So primarily, in most of the references, ultraviolet radiation is being trapped by the ozone layer, which cannot penetrate to the Earth or the Earth's surface. So technically, ozone layer protects us from ultraviolet radiation or very strong um, light wavelength. Okay, so how does an ozone form in the atmosphere? So if you have an O2, for example, okay, so upon oxygen molecules are photolysed yielding two oxygen atoms and one oxygen atom. So naghihiwalay yung isang atom ng oxygen. So ozone and oxygen atoms are continuously being interconverted as solar UV breaks ozone and the oxygen atoms reacts with the oxygen molecule. Okay? So mas pag nag-dissociate siya, nagre-react siya sa one oxygen atom as compared to two oxygen atom. Okay? So, aside from that, although reactive siya dito, okay, so nagre-react din siya sa two atoms of oxygen forming the ozone. So ozone is lost by the reaction of the oxygen atom or the ozone molecule with each other or some other trace gases such as chlorine. Okay? So it is not only two atoms of oxygen that it reacts, nagre-react din siya sa ibang gases. Kaya makikita natin mamaya na problematic yung emission ng different gases in the atmosphere kasi nga hindi bumabalik sa tamang form or hindi na po-form ulit yung tinatawag na ozone gas. Okay? It is because of the presence of other gases. Okay. So why do we care about atmospheric ozone? So there are different classifications of ozone. We have good, bad, and natural ozone. So for good ozone, stratospheric ozone is considered good for humans and other life forms because it absorbs UVB radiation. Okay, so you have this part, you have the good ozone here from the sun. Okay, so it's technically that's the protective ozone or the good ozone that protects us from UV radiation. So there are three classes of UV based on its wavelength, and as you can see, or as you search for the three classes of UV radiation, the lower the wavelength, the stronger the energy of a particular light. So if you have ultraviolet A, so most likely that's 320 to 400. So can get through even a foggy cloud day, so less forceful than B and C. If you have UVV, much stronger than A because of less wavelength, 280 lang at 320 can damage the DNA and cause genetic defects. So most probably have genetic alterations and mutations which are caused by UV radiation, particularly UVB. So it weakens the immune system in humans and animals. Okay, sorry. So for the most powerful or strongest type of UV, you have UVC kasi nga mababa ang kanyang wavelength, so malakas ang energy, is shielded by the ozone layer. So most probably, since this is very harmful UV, ito yung natatrap ng UV. Okay? So most of the time, may mga instances na itong UVA at UVB nagpe-penetrate pa rin sa surface ng Earth.